have 3 people on our panel, and I'll go ahead and introduce them. First, we have Joe Renz. Joe is the managing partner at NewMobility Consulting, which assists startups and investors to take advantage of the opportunities associated with the digital transformation of transportation and mobility. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much.
We also have Professor Han Wan. Han is an associate professor at Purdue University, where she runs the university's blockchain lab. Please welcome Han. And we have Professor Heather Sullivan. Heather is the Associate Director of External Relations for the College of Business Administration at Marquette University. And she also runs the university's blockchain lab. Welcome, Heather. So before we get into questions, I'd like to give you guys all about a minute to introduce yourselves and tell everyone what you do and what your work is in the blockchain space.
Sure. Should I take
Ladies
this?
first.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Sullivan. I'm with Marquette University. Any Marquette grads in here, alumni? I don't know, maybe. If you don't know, Marquette's in Milwaukee. And so I've been with Marquette for about 8 months. I come from kind of a banking background. And my role with the college, or with the university, is to serve the College of Business. So I was introduced in a role that was new to the college, and it was kind of to facilitate relationships between faculty and external partners of any type. So it's a very broad role. And as I started to get into my position, I started to I had a personal interest in blockchain that for a few years my husband and I had been kind of excited about the potential of Bitcoin, excited about the potential of Ethereum and other cryptos. And blockchain solutions. So we were, personally interested in it. When I got to Marquette, I thought, well, maybe there's some interest among faculty in exploring this a little more. So, especially because my husband had gone to a hackathon in Nashville, a distributed hackathon, and it was really inspiring. And came back to Milwaukee and started asking around, who's interested in blockchain? And I didn't really get a lot of interest. And this was only about a year ago. So at any rate, I started talking to faculty, and it was very slow to start. But I identified 1 or 2 faculty members in business primarily, and also in our computer science department that were excited about blockchain, the potential for blockchain. Not necessarily experts, but they were interested, and they felt that if this is where the puck is moving, so to speak, that our students need to know and be prepared for as they prepare to enter the talent pipeline. So that's kind of how the conversation started, and this journey of me trying to find people, really find faculty, find industry partners in Milwaukee that were doing blockchain R&D, which was pretty limited when I started this. That led to us hosting the Milwaukee Blockchain Conference in early November, and we had about 300 people come. So for us, that was a good start, and I started to build some confidence, and that allowed me to propose a blockchain lab that would look at a variety of things, from community education to getting some, changing our curricula, getting more blockchain content into the classroom and across our colleges. So business content, computer science, engineering, and also possibly work on some blockchain solutions for industry partners, startups, et cetera, in the community. So, and then also the social justice component. So that's kind of what I'm working on.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I come from Purdue University. Yeah, again, any alumni from Purdue? Yay. So I'm in the industrial engineering department. Actually, they call School of Industrial Engineering. Our lab is perhaps the first lab in the United States to study blockchain from the operation research point of view. And we have multiple graduate students, we have postdoc, more importantly, we have a group of the faculties that are connected together. What I have found is that when you are outside the CS and probably ECE department, when you talk about blockchain, the people will kind of say, what? What are you talking about, right? So there's a long way to go for the education and for the research. I will talk more about that later.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm on, yeah. My name is Joe Renz. I am born and raised in Stuttgart, Germany. This is Car Central, Porsche, Daimler, and Bosch and other companies. And growing up as an engineer, I thought I'm going to end up in the automotive industry. And serendipity struck after college, and I ended up in IT. So I went through the disruption of mainframe to client server, to the internet, to cloud. And 4 years ago, inspired by Chicago's startup scene, I started my own business with my brother, who in 1999 was at the MIT event when Kevin Ashton coined the phrase Internet of Things. And we've been waiting for a long, long time for an enabler, a platform that can help us make the Internet of Things a reality. And we're now in NewMobility, as I was introduced, and so we're looking at autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, and so the car really is the ultimate IoT device. It produces a ton of data, and particularly when it's connected. We're talking terabytes of data, and we heard all the speakers before talk about the data being the new oil. And so when we got introduced at the World Mobile Congress in Barcelona to the IOTA Foundation, out of Berlin, we were very excited because IOTA has built a distributed ledger technology that is truly the backbone of IoT. And as I'm based here in Chicago and with Disruption Joe, the point of building a community here, we're very excited that the IOTA Foundation has a partnership with the Connectory here in Chicago, which is Bosch's in 1871's co-working space. And we have one of the first IOTA employees here in the audience today, Jesse, sitting second row. And so it's very exciting to contribute to this ecosystem because, again, as we heard before, the tide will rise all boats, and we have a unique value proposition here that we're supporting with our nonprofit called NewMobility Lab. So thank you very much for sticking around. Look forward to this discussion.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about blockchain in business and academia. But first, in keeping with the theme today, I was wondering if each of you can tell everyone about the moment or the particular aspect of the technology. So that moment for you when you realized that blockchain was going to be something big and you really needed to be involved with it.
Okay. Well, I think I may have alluded to my husband. He's sitting right there. That he does a variety of things in blockchain as well. But he had been talking about Bitcoin in probably 2013, earlier than that. And at first I was a little skeptical, like a lot of people, like what is this Mario coin thing all about? I didn't understand the virtual currency concept and how it could have value. But I was intrigued because I like ideas. And so we started going to some, things here and there. I think one of the turning points for me was going to, we were the only two people who showed up, actually. There was a little class, and a guy who owned a restaurant had a little side room, and he's very passionate, and he gave a class about Bitcoin. And I started to think about the potential of it as a movement, and it started to kind of sink in that this could be something really big. I think what really and then I dabbled a little bit with I'll try and buying a little Bitcoin. But what really got me excited, I think, was the whole smart contract idea and the potential there. I love the original spirit behind Bitcoin, but I really like the way the space is moving in that applying blockchain technology to solve a variety of problems, I think is really exciting. So,
awesome.
Okay, I heard the words actually from my students who strongly recommend me to buy some Bitcoins, which I think is totally for computer geeks, right? And then, but then I starting to teach courses related to data and distributed system and current modern technology. So I think for demonstrating purpose, I should at least investing. So I investing $500. And then suddenly, I show my students, look, the increase of the price, right? So it's $500 before, now it's like $2,000. And my students look at the screen and say, no, professor, it's $3,000. So that's my uh-oh moments, right? So, but what I have learned, in a university, you actually have a lot of chance to talk with people from all different departments. And I heard my CS colleagues continue to talking about this. Well, I learned from this, from the non-technology point of the view in the high level, I suddenly think about this technology should not be just used in the currency. This technology can be used for healthcare. This technology can be used in supply chain. This technology can be used in community and the social network. So that's actually what drew me to this. Yeah.
For us, it was clearly the machine-to-machine economy. If you watch Terminator 2 and you look at Skynet, the machines are taking over. We're not there yet, but we clearly have an opportunity now with the technology as far as it's gone, where you can see a sensor becoming its own economic agent, where it sells and buys data, it pays for its own electricity, and frankly even orders its own replacement part from the factory. And so when you think about machine-to-machine communication, we're talking about very small payments. We're talking about exchange of data that has to be very close to a real-time situation. And for that, the established enterprise resource planning systems, might it be the SAPs or the Oracles, that are cost prohibitive. If a transaction costs me $5 a pop, there's no point in me creating a business case for a $2 or a 0.001 cent scenario. And what distributed ledger has given us has been this opportunity now to really look at use cases that have not ever been done before. And one of my favorite ones that we can all relate to is if you imagine that you have to run to the airport and your autonomous vehicle needs lane preference, and as I pull up behind you, my vehicle talks to your vehicle and says, I'm in a hurry, do you mind getting out of the way? And your vehicle says, no worries, but I want to get paid for that. So this is scenarios we are running in the lab as we speak. And for those of you that are interested, we have a meetup next week on Tuesday at the Connectory where we're showing a recently announced data marketplace that IOTA has created for these sensors to actually sell their data and buy it. And as of today, thanks to Jesse and the Bosch team, we have the first presence of a sensor in actually North and South America. I just checked my link before I came up here to make sure I'm not telling you anything crazy. But here's Chicago again at the forefront of something that is extremely cool. And again, I think distributed ledger technology is providing a huge opportunity for all of us to look at the world in a very, very different way.
Awesome. Let's do questions in a minute. Okay. All right, so we're going to shift for a minute and go to blockchain at universities. And so I'm very curious to know, how does Purdue and Marquette view blockchain technology? Are they considering teaching any courses in it? How do other people at the facility feel about the technology?
Well, when I first started my inquiry, I found one faculty member that was gung-ho, like all in, wanted to introduce not only content about blockchain, but about fintech, and that was the professor who runs our applied investment management program, where he's seeing the disruption in real time. It's not something that's off in the future, it's happening now. So he knew that his students needed to be prepared for that. And when I met him, I think the timing was right, that both of us could kind of start pursuing this more aggressively together. And he has been working on fintech content for his classes, and next semester he'll be rolling out like a 3-week segment on blockchain. And there will be maybe a standalone class in the future. That's just finance. So, there's lots of different angles for this. I think, that was one of the first conversations I had with a faculty member. Now, 8 months later, a lot has changed in the space. It's gotten a lot bigger, a lot more awareness. And what I've been trying to do is identify faculty who are, feel like they're comfortable enough within their knowledge base to actually teach this in a classroom. And that's tricky, but I think it's getting better all the time. So I found an accounting faculty member who actually has some pretty deep knowledge in the space and is going to be introducing some content and maybe doing some academic research. There's two computer science professors that are assistant professors working on tenure, and they're going to do some research and they're going to introduce some content into their classes. So that's kind of where we're starting, is just like finding people and giving them the confidence to pursue this, because I think everybody to this point, at least at Marquette, has been acting kind of as on an island, and they don't really know about each other. So my role as a facilitator is to kind of help these faculty members find each other, share resources, and start getting students involved.
Awesome.
I think at this step, it's more in the seminar and the mini courses stage. In the future, I think towards the business school, computer science department, the industrial engineering department, will be interested to offer this, but from different perspective. Like the CS will be more on the protocol side and the realization, but we will be more on the operation side, and the business school probably more on the financial side.
Excellent. So Marquette University, you run the blockchain lab there, and you guys also are an incubator for startups. Is that right?
Well, we're just starting. I just got approval to I proposed a lab over the summer, and the thinking in our group of faculty members who were interested in this was, we don't really have the expertise yet. Why don't you have an event and see what kind of interest there is in the community and among our students, and see where it goes. And because I felt that event was pretty successful and it built my credibility with this whole idea, the dean of the College of Business approved for me to pursue the lab, so we're just getting it started right now. But I think among the many things I want to explore, one of them is incubating startups, because Marquette has, Milwaukee has a reputation for having a pretty weak startup community. We're on the bottom of a lot of lists. But because of that, I think it kind of galvanized a group of us, not to me so much as like other leaders in the community who are really trying to build a startup community that's much stronger and more supportive. For other reasons, I could get into why that is the case. But at any rate, Marquette has really been a part of that, and we started our own incubation, or kind of like a co-working space, incubation space, where they're trying to incubate student businesses, but also working with the startup community in general. And I want to plug into that from the blockchain angle and say, if any students or anybody from the community wants to start a blockchain startup, come and talk to us, and we'll share our resources with you and try to help you in any way we can. So that's kind of what we're doing there.
Awesome. And what do you see sort of as the future role of universities in the blockchain space? Obviously would be educating people on it, but do you think universities will have a big role in incubating startups and that sort of thing, or putting on events?
I think that they're in a position to do that. I know for sure, I can only speak for Marquette, but I think that the resources we have, and especially in a smaller city like ours where you only have a handful of, pretty strong colleges and universities, I think that we're in a position to do a lot of different things. Educating the community, educating our students obviously is the top one, but working with startups, working with corporate partners to develop solutions, whether that's from faculty partnerships or students getting out into that space. We're really big on experiential learning, which everybody is now, but that's something too that this whole project can help with, is getting our students experience and partnering with all sorts of partners on the outside too.
Awesome. Hong, what do you think about that one?
We are opposite, right? We are a huge public university with all kinds of disciplines. And so I think our lab, we want to, I have just read a Harvard Business Review article about the blockchain, how it can dominate, kind of like the TCP IP that has been distributed in the internet. And they talk about the challenges to have the whole society, because this blockchain is a fundamental change of the distributing system. And so I think for our lab, we want to target on the state-of-the-art problems that nobody has addressed. For example, we want to use the computational game theory to study the blockchain, each player's best strategy, and whether there's an equilibrium or a sequence of the equilibrium considered by the time that can happen. We are also interested to see that in the blockchain, you can generate tons of the data. So how can you use the current statistical learning and the machine learning technology and the AI technology to help the blockchain analysis and to respond, and at the same time, how can the blockchain help the learning process to handling the data and for the best sharing of the data. Usually it's this kind of the technology if we develop, right? And then that can push the blockchain to move to the next level. So that's what our lab is actually focusing on.
Awesome. All right, so shift a little bit, and we're going to talk about, I'd like to talk about the Internet of Things and how that relates to blockchain technology. So, Joe, maybe you can tell us here, you gave us an excellent example about the car paying someone to move out of their way, which would be really great when you're late for a flight. But Also, I'm thinking about security. You know, the Internet of Things is very famously insecure. Like, it's been used for just denial of service attacks and that sort of thing. How do Internet of Things and blockchain mix, and what are the security implications or health that they might bring?
Certainly the basic principles of the immutable ledger technology is already one big aspect that helps in making sure that the data is secure. And another thing that we cannot forget is the identity of the source. So we talked about training AI as one example. I need to know that the source is trusted, but I also need to know that the data has not been tampered with. And I'm in NewMobility, so all my use cases are NewMobility, but you know, we speak, for example, to the Illinois Department of Transportation and say, hey, do you want to know if there's a pothole? A lot of the modern vehicles these days have these pothole sensors that make the suspension harder before you hit the pothole. So now your car knows that there's a pothole. You know, would the city of Chicago or Illinois like to know this? But the most important question is, A, is this a trusted source? And secondly, is the data trusted, or is it some kid somewhere in the middle of nowhere that is fitzing around with the data? And so there, the immutable ledger technology and the security that it brings to the table is actually a very interesting use case that combines big data with artificial intelligence. And in particularly when it comes to autonomous vehicles, there's a lot of play in that space. And so we see that as a huge opportunity. And when I hear people talk about this becoming like a TCP IP, I would encourage people to really look at this from a use case perspective and not just look what technically can be done, but really look at this from a perspective of if we own our data again and we really go into a peer-to-peer relationship, the intermediates go away, that opens up huge opportunities. And we talk to 100-year-old companies that want to reinvent themselves as well as startups, because the barrier of entry has gotten much, much lower than before, where you can really participate in this in a very efficient way.
Awesome. So 2017 has been a crazy year for me in blockchain. The meetup, we started the year with maybe 400 members, now we have like 2,000 members. It's been a really crazy year from my perspective, and I'd be interested to hear what kind of year it's been from your guys' perspective.
Well, that's an interesting question to answer. I mentioned before that in the fall of last year, my husband went to the Distributed Health Hackathon in Nashville. And I came back, and I was still working for the bank at the time that I worked for, a community bank. And community banking is, the one I worked for was not at all interested in blockchain. And there's no way to implement it there, at that time anyway, especially. But I came back to Milwaukee, and I thought, like, wow, Nashville is such a cool city. They're doing really cool things there. Maybe I can do something like that here. You know, I'm a PR person by training. I organize events. Maybe I can organize a hackathon or something. So I started to put out feelers. I reached out to Marquette. I reached out to UWM, the other big university there. It was like crickets chirping. You know, there was nobody interested. Nobody knew what blockchain was. You could always say, like, well, have you heard of Bitcoin? And then they'd be like, yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin. But I actually started a LinkedIn group. Maybe like 12 people joined. I had to like hunt people down, and every time I would find somebody who was remotely interested in blockchain, it was just a side interest for them. They weren't doing anything professionally in that space. That was a year ago. And now, a year later, I would say it is, I mean, especially even in the last couple of weeks, I'm getting people coming out of the woodwork now saying, like, oh, can you tell me about Bitcoin and cryptos, and let's talk about this, and how can I get involved with your blockchain lab? So it's a totally different environment now. Even just starting with one faculty member in May of this year who got it and was interested in this. I mean, he wasn't an expert, but he was following it, and he was interested. That was the only faculty member I could find at the whole university who was, at the time, was really, engaged with it and wasn't totally skeptical. I mean, Milwaukee is very risk-averse, Wisconsin in general, Midwest, very risk-averse. But this is something that it kind of has caught fire everywhere now, and there's a ton of interest. So,
my mom learned the word Bitcoin. Actually, my mom asked me, it seems that you are doing research on that. What is ICO? And I'm like, Mom, are you serious about that? Okay, so I'm just feeling that this is the age. So 2017 kind of reminds me when the internet company started emerging. It's almost like, as exciting as that. And also, I feel that there's a shorter and shorter cycle for the technology to touch everybody's life. Okay, I have several talking speakers at home who tell me the temperature, and the Amazon trying to sell me a camera that can shoot me and tell me you dress really ugly, you should change, right? So I personally think we are in a tipping point that the AI will become everybody's part of the life. And the Bitcoin and the associated technology will not just the geek person. You probably see that more and more retailers are accepting Bitcoins. And the people are talking about to have the blockchain, to use the database and all this kind of technology. So I think we are experiencing a revolution of the technology to the human life. And I'm really happy I'm part of that.
Yeah, for us it was easy. When I say us, I'm advising the IOTA Foundation. But the IOTA Foundation accomplished something that has never been done before in Germany. I'm not sure about Europe and the rest of the world, but certainly not Germany, which is to be registered as a cryptocurrency-based nonprofit as a foundation. It was a long process. It took more than 12 months. And if you can imagine, if you go into the first office, we all probably registered a business once or twice, and you say, hey, and by the way, I'm crypto, and I'm open source, and my source code is on GitHub. You can imagine the person who sits there for the last 30 years doing rubber stamping certain things, scratching their head a little bit. And so it was a major breakthrough for the foundation, which allowed the foundation to now fund the development fund and do other things. So from that perspective, it was certainly the biggest highlight. The other thing that I was always amazed by, because we did distributed ledger projects that were non-IOTA last year as well, is that in particular the big corporations are very open to embracing this now, and we think this is because they have use cases, they see the potential of this, but they just need to have the right ingredients, people, process, and technology to get something like this off the ground. And so from that perspective, that's the highlight of the year.
Excellent. So Hong, you mentioned AI.
Yes.
I'm curious to know how you see blockchain and AI playing with each other, interacting with each other in the future.
Let me give you an example. You guys all know almost every insurance program now trying to emphasize the prevention. Okay, and they give you all these booklets and everything. And I think one of the projects my group currently is working on is trying to say that everybody will have an online profile that actually record your healthcare condition from the very start, probably when you are a baby, okay? And then going there, then the AI, in this case, can decide which group will be more prone, okay, based on each test result, and based on your race, based on your food consuming habits, will be more prone to the diabetes, for example, or high blood pressure, okay? And then the healthcare provider, in this case, can give you the specific caution prevention techniques on that. Why is the blockchain is needed in this case is because we're talking about healthcare data. You don't want to throw that around just to the open forum or anything. So blockchain, in this case, can decide where to distribute, what to distribute, and probably I will only share for 3 days, then it's gone, right? And also, this related, so the AI in this case can help you to monitoring. Another example I want to give you is that, let's say that everybody knows there's a very rigorous rule about how you can share the healthcare data. So in the future, when I have my healthcare data and I find it's out, it leaks to some places, the blockchain can help me to trace back every step this record has been shared. And the AI, in this case, can help me to monitoring any abnormal utilization of my data or emerging of my data and do this judgment. Okay, so this is just an example in here. One of my colleagues who is associated with the lab, Professor Bernat Agel, he's the expert of the AI and the deep learning. So we're collaborating on this to see how can we combine the AI and the blockchain technology to solve the problem.
Awesome. Some very interesting things. I think we're going to try and take one question here. Do you want to?
Yes, I had a question for the Internet of all things. The machine-to-machine talking and that scenario I thought was incredible. So when that form of payment happens, how is that form of payment going to be made, and in what form is that going to be made?
Can you go ahead and rephrase that question for everyone as well?
So the question is, if machine-to-machine economy starts to work, how do the machines pay each other? What's the mechanism behind it? Yeah. So the IOTA Foundation has I call it distributed ledger for a reason, right? So this is a blockchain event, and even distributed disruption. Joe and I talked about the naming of it, but IOTA is a block and a chainless approach. So it's a tangle. And it's a highly scalable approach, so the more machines are in this, the more potent it becomes. And because there's no miners, it is a transaction fee-free approach. The only thing you have to do is you solve 2 transactions in order to submit one. So it's a paying forward model. So now if I am a sensor and I have data that you would like to experience, I put it on the data marketplace, and I can either sell it to the highest bidder, or I can give you a subscription to it, and you can get the temperature at Navy Pier at 2 o'clock every single day. And for this information, you now would exchange an IOTA token with me, or a smaller denomination of that. And so there is a cryptocurrency associated with the IOTA Foundation as well, called the IOTA token. And the one sensor would then put from its wallet the micropayment to the other sensor. And the magic really is that there is no friction. So the 0.001 cent that you sent is also received by me to be 0.01 cent. And that's when these business models that I was talking about with the car moving out of the lane make sense. These microcharges for e-vehicles, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, platooning, so when trucks pull up behind each other to aid with wind resistance, the first person has to consume the gas. This the driver of the platoon. You can pay him. Imagine all the things you can do with this technology. So I'm not a technologist. I don't know how to mine. Someone asked me if there was a pump. I'm like, I don't know what a pump is either. I look at this purely from the opportunity as a business person on all the stuff we can build. And imagine these sensors talking to each other in a way where, again, I pay for my own electricity as a sensor or as a device. I order my own replacement part, and then I need someone to hang me up on the wall, so I can even go out in the marketplace for that and say, either a robot or you as a human, do you want to make an IOTA? Yes, put a nail in the wall and hang me up here, I mean, and then it becomes very, very interesting, where there's no more ownership, where it's not a corporation or you as an individual who owns the sensor. The sensor owns itself.
Excellent. Do we have any more questions? Yeah? One more? All right. I think I got one final question for the panelists before we wrap it up. I'd love to hear what your predictions are for 2018, or what you are most excited about in 2018 in the blockchain space.
Whoa, I don't know if I want to make any predictions. It's pretty, there's so many, I feel like it could go in a few different directions.
Yes.
I'm really hoping it goes in the right direction according to what I want to do. But I'm really looking forward to, the growth of some of these technology solutions that are in the works right now, and seeing them kind of mature and solve real problems. I think that 2018 might be the year that starts to happen more. I mean, I've heard people say 2017 is, think that's starting, but I think it will get better in 2018. And hopefully there won't be a big burst or collapse of the whole Bitcoin thing, so.
I hope in 2018 we can have our solid research result to apply and study the blockchain to the other areas for application.
For me, it would be large-scale adoption of production systems. So what I mean by that is, if it doesn't work, it's a problem and not just a lab. Oopsie. So this could be a publicly traded company, this could be a private company, but it would hurt if the thing doesn't work. And these production systems, we're very close. We have a charging station in the Netherlands where you pay with IOTAs, and there will be mass adoption of that. So we'll see the first of these industrial strength mass adoption production systems.
Awesome. I think we're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.